What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Big Time Football Talk. So it was rumored today from Matt Miller, an ESPN insider, that the Lions really love Tyree Wilson. And man, does this make me happy because Tyree Wilson is a beast. I mean, this dude, if you want to go listen to my full breakdown of him, you go back and watch my edge rankings. Tyree Wilson came in at number 2, but I got that shifted now. He's my number 1 edge rusher. This dude is just he's a problem. Long arms, 6'6", 270. I know that's always the first topic of conversation when you talk about Tyree Wilson, but this dude just, if you like one guy physically dominating another man, and sometimes even multiple men, whether it's tackles or guards, then you'll be a big fan of Tyree Wilson's film. Truly recommend that you go watch some of his tape if you're a Lions fan, just so you can see what's in store if you draft this guy. There's several cut-ups on YouTube. The Oklahoma game, the TCU game this past year is a good embodiment of what this guy is all about, what he's going to bring to the table, just what type of grown man strength this guy has. And, you love the versatility. I mean, this is a guy that you can move him inside, play zero tech. Maybe that's not ideal, but this guy that can line up head up over the guard, in between the guard and tackle, as like a, 2-3 technique. Tyree Wilson, this has just become a huge man crush for me. And if you listen to Dan Campbell was interviewed on the Rich Eisen show yesterday, Campbell was saying he's got a few man crushes in this draft, and I assume Tyree Wilson's one of them. I assume Devin Witherspoon's another one, because he asked him, Dan Campbell, what he was looking for, or if there's any man crushes in this draft, because Hutchinson was last year, and Dan Campbell described a guy that the game it looks like the game really means a lot to him. Plays hard, puts a lot of high quality plays on film, and to me, Tyree Wilson and Devin Witherspoon really fit that description. But yeah, I mean, I've tried to watch as much tape on Tyree Wilson I can. This dude, stud, beast, monster, whatever adjective you want to use to describe this guy. This dude just, is a, I mean, he, started his career at Texas A&M, has just, gotten better and better in the last two seasons at Texas Tech, just phenomenal. Even though the numbers aren't there, this guy has just been so disruptive. Just been a dominant force on the Texas Tech defense. And, teams have really, had to make sure they schemed away from him and just made sure that they were blocking this guy. But, that's the report today. That's the rumor that the Lions do want Tyree Wilson. And, boy, it would be a great pick, especially if they just, especially if they could sit there with the 6th pick in the draft and get him, not having to give up any assets to move up and get this guy. So, it would be awesome if they could just sit back with the number 6 pick and select a player like Tyree Wilson. It'd be awesome. Obviously, I think Witherspoon's in play. Maybe Van Ness from Iowa is another guy that the Lions really like as well. I think his play really embodiments what Dan Campbell described and what Brad Holmes is looking for as well. But like most Lions fans says, and if you listen to Detroit Sports Talk, a lot of people do trust Brad Holmes to make the right decision in this case. Brad Holmes, there's reports out from many people that the Lions, scouting staff is, one of the best in football, and Brad Holmes is, certainly make a case as one of the best GMs in the National Football League. So, exciting news there for me. Someone who really likes Tyree Wilson, someone who thinks he does have a higher upside than Will Anderson. That is, it's very exciting news that the Lions really do like him, and it sounds like he's had a couple workouts with the Lions. So, the only thing that's lacking, I know people have touched on, for some reason he doesn't have the best first step. So hopefully this is something, they can coach, especially when his first step's not great when his hands are in the ground, but, when he's standing up, he does he does get off the snap a little quicker. When he's playing in a true stand up, when he's rushing on the outside. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. So yeah, I'm not really sure how the fans, that is a good point. It was raised on Detroit Sports Talk, what the fans would think of, the Lions taking Tyree Wilson. I think a lot of fans, are really honed in on taking Jalen Carter or taking Will Anderson, but the bottom line is the Lions are in a good chance to draft at least one of those three guys, which is just a huge win, for the Lions, especially, this is pretty much a bonus pick. I mean, obviously they earned it through trading Matthew Stafford, but it is kind of like just an extra fun pick. Any other draft talk? Anything on my mind draft wise? So yeah, I think Will Levis. I want to talk about Will Levis for a minute. So, Will Levis is my third ranked quarterback, and I'm almost falling into the trap of wanting to make the guy lower just because I'm hearing so many different opinions, most of them not good, about Will Levis. And so basically, I watched Will Levis's tape in depth in the summer of 2021 tape, and what I came away with was, Will Levis is he's a very good football player. This is a guy that looks the part at the quarterback position. Last year he had Wan'Dale Robinson. Offensive line was a little better. They did lose that the stud tackle they had. This year, things just didn't really work as well. And I'm thinking in my head, what guys had a lot of hype around him, like Will Levis. Maybe potentially a top 5 pick, arguably in the discussion top quarterback, that the next year didn't have as good of a year. One guy that comes to mind is Jameis Winston. I'm trying to think who else. Matt Barkley. So, and now that I think about it more, a lot of guys that came in with a lot of hype, and then the next year, disappointed a little bit. It seemed like those guys kind of didn't really have as good of NFL careers as they would hope. Obviously there's guys that kept it rolling all years, like Tim Tebow, Mariota were very good as sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and still were selected first round. But obviously Tim Tebow didn't succeed in the NFL just because the arm strength. I was a little kid, so I was younger, so I didn't realize that. Tim Tebow, the arm strength and just the liveliness of his arm was lacking, and the release wasn't super fluid. But point being, Tebow and Mariota, those guys were just kind of destined, just good college quarterbacks. Didn't really translate. Matt Barkley and Jameis Winston did have some intangibles. As far as that did translate in the NFL. You saw Matt Barkley flash a little bit with the Bears. You saw even Winston had some moments in Tampa Bay despite throwing so many interceptions, including the one year in 2019 throwing all those interceptions. But to me though, that does alarm me that Will Levis, great 2021 season with a lot of things working for him, like I touched on, and then coming back the next year and things just kind of falling apart, and or not really falling apart, but just not really having the season he had hoped, not really living up to expectations. So it really makes you wonder about Will Levis, and really makes me question me having him third behind C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, who I think are the clear-cut 1 and 2 quarterbacks in this draft. So where he goes, which teams like him, that's the other thing. I haven't really heard any rumors of which teams like Will Levis. With Anthony Richardson, you hear Carolina might be interested. You hear rumblings with the Colts. Obviously, Carolina seems like a lock to take Bryce Young. With the Texans, you hear that it sounds like they may only like Bryce Young and not as much C.J. Stroud. But you don't really hear any rumblings about which team may be interested in Will Levis. So, yeah, it will be Will Levis certainly is a guy to watch in this draft. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, another guy. If you follow Chris Sims' draft rankings, which, I talk about quite frequently, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was a guy that Chris Sims really liked. And, when you go back, you got to really like some of the attributes Dorian Thompson-Robinson had. He's a guy that, a lot of fans were giving him a lot of credit for his game, and he was kind of like, I forget which chat room it was. Some analyst was talking about, who's one of the more underrated quarterbacks, or who's like a sleeper quarterback in this draft, and everyone first choice, or a lot of fans were saying Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So, yeah, where Dorian Thompson-Robinson goes will be interesting. Does Hendon Hooker go in the first round? To me, I keep envisioning Hendon Hooker going in the end of the first round. I have no idea. I know I shouldn't base analysis on my feelings. Obviously, that it's actually kind of dumb. But to me, though, you get a feel like Hendon Hooker is going to go late first round. You feel like this draft, the quarterbacks are going to go early. There could be 4 in the top 5 picks, even 3 in the top 5. But you get a feeling, the injury a little scary. Maybe some teams do account for the age thing, but you get a feel like Hendon Hooker, maybe, some team trades back up into the first round for Hendon Hooker. And then what do the Chicago Bears do at 9? So, I do listen to Chicago sports talk radio. I haven't really heard exactly who's kind of like their guy. To me, I would go offensive line. I know they got Orlando Brown in free agency, but to me though, being a Lions fan and then watching what the Philadelphia Eagles and watching what the 49ers have done, I have really become a big believer in building the trenches first. And you saw Dallas a few years ago. You saw the Raiders. Everyone talks about how good Zeke was. If you remember, Zeke really was the icing on the cake to that offensive line. So, to me, back to my point with Chicago, if you're the Bears, you take a Paris Johnson, an Anton Harrison, a Darnell Wright. Darnell Wright, a guy that's, seems to be moving, shooting up mock drafts. I think it's no coincidence because I love Darnell Wright. I think that would be a great pick because, Darnell Wright, this is a guy that, Orlando Brown primarily plays left tackle. So if you take Darnell Wright, I'm not sure, to be honest, who Chicago has at right tackle. But Darnell Wright's a guy, not only can he play guard, but he excelled this year playing right tackle anyway. So I think that would be a great pick. This tackle class, I think that I've harped on it. This tackle class is very underrated. I think there's a lot of good offensive tackles in this class. Harrison from Oklahoma, even Tyler Steen from Alabama. Blake Freeland's getting a lot of buzz from BYU. I have not watched his tape, so I will not give any input about his game. But, Peter Skoronski, whether you like him at guard, tackle, center, busboy. But, Peter Skoronski, another good one. Osiris Torrence, I really like at guard. I think he's he's going to be a guy that if you love, big, mean guards. So I guess every team likes that. But if you're a big fan of just butt kicking guard play and a guy that's just a outstanding man blocker and just can demoralize defensive linemen with combo blocks, Osiris Torrence is your guy. And I think he does fit well in the zone blocking scheme as well. But this is a guy that just it looks like he takes pride in man blocking, and he's a guy that can hold anchor up against any defensive lineman. And like people have talked, he was not outclassed in the Georgia game when he went up against Jalen Carter. Carter was really the only guy that actually pushed this guy back and actually really challenged his anchor and base. So I like Osiris Torrance's game. I think he's a guy that most people have slipping to the second round. I think he should go first round. I'm not really sure what the concern would be. It sounds like he has giant, over 11-inch hands too. So, and then I was listening to 92.9 The Game, local Atlanta sports talk. It'd be interesting what the Falcons do. Just traded for former Lion Jeff Okudah. I think he'll be a good fit with A.J. Terrell. Touched on that a little bit. I think it's a good second chance for Okudah. But it sounds like a lot of Falcons fans want a Christian Gonzalez. So I'm not sure if they go corner now. To me, I think this is a perfect spot for Luke Van Ness from Iowa to go. Van Ness is a very good football player. To me, Van Ness is really what the Falcons need. You got Grady Jarrett, who's been a solid piece on the defensive line. You got Okudah and Terrell. You got a pretty solid secondary. The defense overall, this roster, like I said with the Bears, when you're looking at a team with a roster that's just, below average, why not just start building it from the trenches? Luke Van Ness, it's a great position to start. And the Falcons, it's still a very average offensive line. It's still not a very good offensive line. I know you got Luke Matthews there, but yeah, you add Luke Van Ness, you got a power, strength, strong, big dude that can play the zero. They can play D tackle. He can even play, the true zero tech. You can line Luke Van Ness up anywhere, kind of like Tyree Wilson. So, adding Luke Van Ness would be a nice move for the Falcons there at 8. And then we'll touch on the Seahawks. So, Seattle, being a Seattle fan years ago, it was kind of it was a little frustrating because you never knew what they were going to do, and I really got frustrated with a lot of picks they made. But Jalen Carter just feels like the pick that Seattle needs to make, because it seems like for years, picking towards the end of the first round, they just they did have a nice pick with Jordan Brooks, the linebacker from Texas Tech. He's been a nice player. A lot of some of their starters on offense and defense have been late round picks. They haven't had a lot of success drafting in the first round. Sadly, except with the exception, last year getting Charles Cross and then getting the other tackle for Washington State. So at least you do have the tackles position anchored. But Jalen Carter, to me though, it's a chance for Seattle to get a true blue chip defensive lineman. Something that they, something that's really been kind of missing from this team for years now, since maybe even going back to Michael Bennett. I know L.J. Collier was decent for them. They got who's the one one of their tackles? I can't think of his names, but he's been pretty solid. But yeah, Seattle, a team that's tried somewhat to fix the trenches, but Jalen Carter, with the off the field issues aside, Seattle taking Jalen Carter, you got to like the upside. And then, I'll touch on it. The Philadelphia Eagles rumored to take Jaxon Smtih-Njigba at 10, and I would like it. I don't know if I'd love it, but I'd like it. Jaxon Smtih-Njigba, it's a guy that just knows how to get open, and I think he'd be a nice, another nice weapon with Jalen Hurts at the receiver position. That's going to create some serious problems, because you got the physicality of A.J. Brown, and then you got the ability to get open with Jaxon Smtih-Njigba. So I think those two would be a problem. And then you got Devontae Smith there. Now you have a truly no excuse offense. The offensive line, arguably the best in football, right up there with Detroit's. And the defense, obviously you've lost some pieces. Gardner Johnson, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham getting up there on the defensive side. But, Philadelphia, this is a team that, they still have some dudes. And, like I trust Brad Holmes, I trust Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman, probably my second favorite general manager in the NFL, a guy that, if you know his background, didn't play college football. This guy is just a believer in building the trenches, and a guy that really has had an eye for talent and has really helped Philadelphia, bring in a lot of talent. And he has kind of stayed true to who he is. If you remember, the Eagles team that won it, this team this year that won it all reminded me of the 2018. And I know they had a lot of the same players, but if you remember back in 2018, they won the line of scrimmage. They they still had some nice pieces as far as the skill position is concerned. And Roseman, respect. Even though you should, as a GM, you should always be evolving and always taking risks and always trying new things. Roseman staying true to himself has helped him win a Super Bowl, and it helped him almost win another one this year. So Philadelphia, with the 10th pick, Jaxon Smtih-Njigba would be interesting. Smtih-Njigba, my number 2 receiver now. Zay Flowers, my number 1 receiver. Zay Flowers, so a lot of people have compared him to Antonio Brown, and I'll be honest, I think I do see the comparison to Antonio Brown. This is a dude that, he can separate. He separates like his life depends on it. Like he just wants to, when he breaks down and separate, you really can just see the distance of separate. I mean, it's very clear. And the guy that when he gets the ball in his hand, really wants to just turn and just create lightning. And he wants to just get the ball and just get to the end zone as fast as he can. Zay Flowers, when I watched this tape in the summer, I initially had a low grade on him. I don't know if I was I wasn't in the right mind frame, or I went in, not expecting to like him. I know I did watch a few games where he didn't have as good of games, but, my takeaway with Zay Flowers was this guy, my first initial takeaway was, this guy's only going to be a slot receiver in the NFL. And it turns out I was wrong. He's, become much more than that. This is a guy that, he can win on the outside. He can win contested catches. He's competitive as heck. This is a dude that, can break multiple tackles on run after the catch. And he's a guy that's, added some muscle after the combine. Not the biggest guy, but does play very strong, plays a lot stronger than his size. So, there's a lot to like about Zay Flowers, and you see he's a guy that his stock seems to be rising coincidentally as more NFL teams begin to watch tape on some of these guys. So I'll touch on another guy. If we're talking other players in the draft, Michael Wilson out of Stanford. Michael Wilson, I love he has some very good releases off the line of scrimmage. You can tell he's really worked hard on that. His feet. He moves his feet very well, and he does a good job of manipulating defensive backs. This is a guy that does have the size at over 6'2" to go up and win contested catches, and he does win a majority of them. That's one thing this receiver class is lacking, a guy that can truly go up and win contested catches. Michael Wilson certainly can do that. He's a guy that's, battled through injury. If you put it, but, I mean, with Michael Wilson, you got to do a couple of things. You have to put aside, first of all, no one should ever watch Stanford's offense. You should not watch tape of Stanford's offense too often. You'll probably get sick to your stomach. So you got to put that aside, and also you have to put aside the injuries to an extent. If you just evaluate Michael Wilson, the football player without the injuries, without how god-awful Stanford's offense was that caused him to his lack of production a little bit, that you will come away liking Michael Wilson. Number 4 guy for Chris Sims, guy that's probably in my top 5. I don't know where. To me, my receiver rankings were all over the place. I've kind of went back and forth on a lot of guys, but Michael Wilson's a guy I really like, and his game really stands out, and he had a really, has played some very good football for Stanford when healthy.